Traders, how are you? With Marcello. Today, we're going to be doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week. We have comets the size of mini planets. We have a heat wave that's melting pavement in the Northwest. And we even have new crypto scams. Let's go ahead and get started. So overall for the week, the markets in the U.S. mostly positive. Same narrative as the last few weeks where everybody's basically just worried about inflation, but is everything going to open again? You know, a lot more people are getting vaccinated. Restrictions are being removed. So the market has definitely continued to go up because of those expectations, in addition to the government, continuing to put in that stimulus. And these are world governments, not only the U.S. S&P 500 and the NASDAQ hit a record high. Overseas market news, the European markets mostly follow the U.S. ones. Those went higher as well, London being the biggest winner there. And Latin American and I always say Canada. I don't know why I always say that, but I'm sorry. I know a lot of you guys in Canada watch the videos or listen to the podcast. So from now on, I think I'll call you guys the the Republic, the Communist Republic of Canada, since they just don't want to stop the lockdowns. But I digress. So overall, the markets in the Americas were mixed. The Canadian market went up 0.98%. Africa and the Middle East also mixed as well. Egypt had a good bump up at 4.18%. And in the far east, the biggest winner there was China at about 2.33%, even though most of the markets there were mixed. Bitcoin and cryptocurrency news, there were a pair of brothers from South Africa that have hit a score with $4 billion. They've literally stolen the customers' funds from an exchange there. And this is what I always told you guys in regards to Bitcoin and the cryptos. It's not that Bitcoin per se is a scam, because I believe in the idea behind Bitcoin, but since there's no regulation, there are more scams in Bitcoin. Everything from, the new altcoins that they launched, just, diarrhea coin, come and invest. You see what I mean? So, and one of the things that's really interesting too is kind of in our thought process, especially in the West and the United States, we always talk about how this only happens in these kind of countries, whether it's, South Africa or Nigeria, this kind of, not India. I'm thinking of the country right next to India. If you guys can help me out, I've completely forgot the name. But, we think like these countries that are a little bit more corrupt or a little bit more bureaucratic, these emerging economies, we think that's the only place where it happens. And if you guys don't remember, there was an exchange in Canada, that, give me a like. Give me a like for that. It's funny. So there was an exchange called Quadriga. I don't know exactly how to call it, but this same thing happened in the country of Canada, and they didn't recover the customers' funds. So just be careful, right? There's a video I did on the Spanish side, which I want to upload on the English side as well, about the risks of investing in Bitcoin because of what we're seeing happening, right? Another big thing, for example, is the crackdown in China when it comes to the cryptos. This is kind of what started this downtrend. Not to say it's not going to continue to go up, but if somebody like Elon Musk or somebody like China can just start cracking down, and everybody's been telling me, no, they can't shut it down because it's decentralized. Well, they're shutting it down in China. I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to, but essentially now China is, after kicking out the miners, right? If you guys remember, they've been kicking them out the last few weeks, since May, actually. And now they're sat down with a meeting with the banks talking about how they don't want to offer people crypto services. So just, diversify. It's not that you can't make money in crypto. Obviously, the U.S. could start doing the same thing as China. I think if the U.S. starts to do it, other countries will follow suit. But, you can still make money. Just maybe don't put everything that you have in crypto, because, whether it's the volatility or this risk of an exchange, for example, for some of you guys that are overseas. Monday, Bitcoin fell 10% because of the news on China, how they had the meeting with the banks to make sure they reiterated to stop offering those crypto services. MicroStrategy, the company that took out a loan, junk bond loan, meaning just a low quality, let's say, loan with a very high interest rate. They took out $489 million to be able to invest in Bitcoin. They bought over 13,000 Bitcoin, and they now have over 105,000 Bitcoins at an average price of about $26,000, just over that. The total amount that they have purchased so far in Bitcoin is $2.74 billion so far. Now, there are some analysts that are saying that the actual technicals on the chart show that we might actually see a little bit more of a downtrend. So now, if we kind of correlate what has happened me with the experience that I've had over the last 21 years, whether it's learning how to trade or teaching traders or funding traders to trade our money, for example, with Speed Up, it's you kind of correlate what happened last time. Well, the last time we had this parabolic move where we kept making record highs, it took a few years to recover. So we might actually see that now with Bitcoin as well. So we'll see what happens in the future. Overall for the week, Bitcoin was down 17.26% to just under 30,500. Commodities, Brent International crude, which is called Brent, is holding strong at about $73 a barrel after it's gone up over the last 4 weeks. This is obviously because of the inconclusive nuclear talks with Iran. They're obviously, they've had a couple of meetings. They haven't defined things. There's still things that they want to kind of iron out, let's say. And Iran did just have an election, and a new president came in, which is a bit of a hardliner. So he's going to want to do what he wants to do, whereas the whole world, especially the U.S., doesn't want them to have nuclear weapons, and that's kind of why they're having their nuclear talks. U.S. crude for the week went up 3.36% to 74.05, while international, which is called Brent, went up 3.63% to about 76.18. Precious metals for the week, gold is up 0.98% to 17.82, while silver is up 1.15% at about 26.20. Financial and banking news, the U.S. Fed chair. If you guys don't know what the Fed is, it's the central bank of the United States, which I'll throw a little nugget out there. Remember, it's not a state-owned bank. It's a private bank. Somebody owns it, just so you know. So the Fed chair, Powell, said Tuesday that he's trying to encourage the job growth and the recovery of the job market by preemptively raising rates based on only the fear of the possible onset of the inflation. And in the news, everybody's calling the inflation that we're currently having, which in my opinion is at about 20-30% transitory, which means that they don't think it's going to continue. But the actual number, the gauge that the actual central bank uses to measure inflation, which is the most conservative number, meaning that the things that they put to calculate the inflation aren't the things that they should put in there to calculate the actual inflation, has hit a record number. I mean, we're having all kinds of signs that the inflation is going up. If you guys don't know what inflation is, it's essentially the increase in prices due to the devaluation of the dollar. It's not that the copper or the lumber or the oil or the wheat or the rice is getting more expensive. It's that the dollar is devaluating. So since most commodities are actually priced in dollars, what happens if the dollar devaluates? The cost of the goods go up. Now, this is being exacerbated by the COVID situation because of the supply chains. We have, crops being destroyed all over the world because of extreme weather. That's why at the end of the videos, I always share these natural disasters that are going on. We got some pretty interesting stuff happened last week. We also have supply chain issues where they can't get things from one end to the other. One example, for example, is the semiconductor chips, which are the chips that practically go in every single electronic today. Ford, for example, I just looked at a new truck. They're running at about 20% capacity because they can't get the chips from Taiwan, and Taiwan is having a drought, so they're rerouting water from food production over to semiconductor production. So that's exacerbating the situation because they can't get the supplies to be able to make the goods, and because the goods aren't there, supply and demand, price goes up even more. So that's why we're kind of seeing this, and I'm sure many of you guys actually see this in the food industry, for example, in the supermarkets. I'd love to hear from some of you around the world, whether in your Australia or the UK or the US, Canada, anywhere else. Have you guys seen an actual increase in food prices? Things I've heard so far from the guys in the Latin American side, they're even seeing it a lot in Latin America. In political news, Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom in California is going to face a special election after there were more than 1.4 million votes to allow the recall, since he did such an amazing job with the COVID lockdowns. After weeks of negotiation as well, President Biden and a bipartisan group of senators announced that they met a deal on the new infrastructure spending. There's going to be $1.2 trillion spent over 8 years and $500 billion on top of all the spending we have already. So they're going to increase the spending even more. Not that the amount of debt that we have right now is enough. So let's just add a little, sprinkle a little bit on the top. Other than that, it's going to focus on investments, roads, railways, bridges, and broadband internet, but it doesn't include what Biden referred to as human infrastructure, which is things like tax credit for families, childcare, those kind of things. In economic news, the first reading of June services and manufacturing in the Eurozone showed its quickest pace in the last 15 years. So that's a good thing from a global economic perspective, because obviously manufacturing is not a huge chunk of the economy, but a sizable portion, probably anywhere between 10 to 15%. In the United States, it's about 11.9% manufacturing. Seasonally adjusted rate of U.S. single homes also went down by 5.9%. This is due to the cost of the lumber skyrocketing. Remember a few weeks ago in one of the recaps, I talked about if you wanted to buy a new home, it was actually adding $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 to the actual cost of the home because of the cost of the lumber. And it's also due to the increase of other supplies as well. So we have everything from oil that transports the goods going up to the actual goods themselves due to the inflation that I talked to you guys about just a moment ago. Other than that, Wednesday, a data firm called IHS Market said that the U.S. manufacturing PMI went to 62.6 in June, which is a good thing because obviously the manufacturing in the U.S. is 11.9% of the economy. Consumer spending, you and I going out and spending money, is actually close to 70% of the economy. U.S. consumer spending, remember what I just said to you, the most important part of the economy is consumer spending. That went down in May, obviously weighed down by the shortages in the motor vehicle purchases, again, the semiconductors, and also due to the constraints of the supply chains. The Fed's main inflation measure posting its biggest annual increase since 1992. So about 20 years. 1992, 12, 2022. So 19 years. We have the highest level of inflation right now in 19 years. Corporate America, corporate news, Moderna, they went up quite a bit due to the fact that the Department of Defense has decided to buy more than 200 million additional doses of the COVID vaccine. The shares are up almost 100% in 2021. And Caterpillar also had a great week due to the passage and news of the infrastructure bill. If you guys, Caterpillar, they're the ones that make those huge construction trucks and all other items when it comes to things like construction, manufacturing, and things like that. So if they're spending $1 trillion on infrastructure, they're definitely going to use this company, which means that they're going to make a lot of profits in the future. Trade news, the communist state of Canada is extending the travel restrictions until July 21st. The border chief, Bill Blair, said they're not going to reopen the border until 75% are fully vaccinated. Currently, less than 20% of Canadians are vaccinated. And here in Florida, they don't even require masks. Nobody cares about COVID, and everybody is not dying. FYI, the border actually may be closed for a lot longer than expected due to the fact that it may take a lot longer for people to get vaccinated there in Canada. And there's a loss right now in the tourism industry of about $16 billion in 2020. All traveling related businesses. Technology, Chinese regulators are saying Tesla has to recall nearly 300,000 Model Y and Model 3 cars for an online software update related to the assisted drivers. The owners aren't going to have to turn in their vehicles, but they will have to do the recall. German car maker Volkswagen said that they're going to make only electric vehicles by 2035. And then they're going to also do it later in the U.S. and China. They want to do the same thing in Africa and also Latin America, but due to the fact of the political will in addition to the infrastructure, that might be a lot later. Now, this is, Tesla might actually be in trouble. The big boys are coming now, right? So they're losing a lot of their market share. They're still not making any money. When they do make money, it's because they sell government, the credits, the environmental credits. It's not because they sell cars. And so, Tesla might have a serious problem on their hands now that we have the big boys like Volkswagen, for example, that are starting to come online. Investment news, Blackstone Group, a private equity fund, one of the biggest funds in the world, which manages close to $40 billion, Tuesday bought a company called Home Partners of America for $6 billion. This company owns 17,000 houses. And the idea is that they rent out to tenants, but then they give the tenants the option to buy. Now, another video that I wanted to do for you guys as well is talk about the Great Reset in 2030, where the World Economic Forum, they talk about how, you're going to not own anything in 2030, but you're going to be happy. But hedge funds can own houses and Bill Gates can own farmland. That's okay. They can own stuff. Tuesday, the European Commission stated that it's going to investigate Google whether it distorted the competition by restricting third-party access to their user data. Obviously, they still have access to the data, so they're saying it might be unfair competition because obviously Google would never do anything wrong. Google generated a total of $147 billion from online ads in 2020, far more than any other company in the world, including the search engine, Gmail, and YouTube as well. BuzzFeed is going to go public at a value of $1.5 billion. For those of you who are interested in buying a share in this newspaper, online news company. Shares of Panasonic surged over 4% on Friday as they decided to sell all of their Tesla stock, valued at about $3.6 billion. They wanted to continue the partnership vis-a-vis selling the batteries to Tesla, but they wanted to cash up front for future investments. You see how everybody's jumping ship? International events, new president-elect Ebrahim Raisi, which is the new president of Iran, the president-elect. He is agreeing to reimpose constraints on Iran nuclear program to be able to go ahead and continue with the deal. In Colombia, the amount of acreage that's being used to be able to grow cocaine has increased by 15.5%, and the production of cocaine has also gone up by 7.9%. So, things in Colombia, the economy isn't as good. We're not selling, coffee, let's say. Let's switch to cocaine because it's a lot more lucrative. In unusual facts this week, a hacker had tried to poison the San Francisco Bay area water supply on the 15th of January. They were able to actually catch him. It was a cyber attack. If you guys are not noticing the amount of cyber attacks that we're seeing, all of a sudden, right, the gas pipeline from the Eastern Coast, the largest meat producer in the world, health provider. Now you have the supply of water from a city. All of this in a matter of a few months when, for years, we never had a problem. Coincidence? Maybe the preppers were right? What do you think? So they were able to identify the breach very quickly, but its authorities are seeing a troubling trend, in cyber attacks in the U.S. water infrastructure across the country. Janice McAfee is blaming U.S. officials and authorities due to the fact of the death of his supposed suicide. Just like Epstein. Maybe if I whisper, the algorithm won't catch it. So she's blaming them because she was saying that he was not suicidal at all. So she's blaming the U.S. authorities due to the fact that he unfortunately passed away. A near-perfect preserved human fossil known as the Harbin cranium or the Dragon Man may revolutionize the way that we think about human evolution. This is actually a completely new species that they're now saying may be the closest relative to man, not the one that we've actually been saying for all these years. If you guys don't know a man named Graham Hancock or Randall Carlson, they provide fascinating facts about an alternate version of history that I would highly recommend you guys listen to. On YouTube, you can just look up Joe Rogan's podcast, look up Joe Rogan, Graham Hancock, and you guys can pull it up. Other than that, scientists also, talking about natural disasters, the record heat wave in the Northwest is going to be so hot that it may actually melt the roads. And it's so hot. There's pictures from a Walmart that shut down their refrigerators, the coolers that keep the food cold. They actually are not able to work because it's so hot. So they actually shut them down. And one other thing that's interesting is the photosynthesis from plants drops dramatically at about 104 degrees Fahrenheit, and wheat dies at about 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So the Southwest, which is the Northwest, Oregon area. Now we go to the Southwest of the United States, and they're in the worst droughts from 1,200 years. So it's getting so hot that the plants are going to dry out. It's getting so hot that there's not going to be any water to grow food. And then we're going to have probably pretty bad forest fires over the next few years due to the fact that we have this situation with the actual climate changing. And notice it's not only the heat. Notice that it's also the winters. We had a record amount of snow. We had snow falling in places in Europe, in June earlier this month, which is very unusual. So it's not just heat. It's actually, extreme weather anomalies around the world. Scientists also discovered a comet so big that it may be a dwarf planet that's going to go ahead and zoom by Earth. Another thing that's interesting in regards to that is a new study shows that there's a 27.5 million year catastrophic cycle. Supposedly, the Great Flood from 12,000 years ago was caused by a comet. Graham Hancock talks about that. That's why I recommended it to you guys. In addition to that, there's a shutdown in Iran's Seoul nuclear site. They had to shut it down due to a problem that they're not reporting, obviously. And China also is having a pretty serious nuclear plant issue near the city of Shanghai. Now, one other thing to mention about China, if you guys remember the Three Gorges Dam, which is currently the largest dam in the world, they actually had a problem last year due to the floods, and now there's actually a little bit of movement on that dam, and now the rivers are at above record levels, and a lot of the rivers that go into the main river that the dam is on. That's the news for this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you next week.